This is Bigger Questions with your host, Robert Martin.
Welcome to Bigger Questions, recorded live in Melbourne's CBD. Today's big question: is there a spiritual dimension? My guest today is Julia Pope. Julia is Melbourne born and bred and has worked for numbers of years with churches and faith communities around Melbourne. And she joins me now. Please welcome Julia Pope. Julia, welcome to Bigger Questions.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
That's good. Now, to kick off Bigger Questions, we like to ask a couple of smaller questions. We do try to have a bit of fun on the show. Today, we're talking with Julia Pope about if there is a spiritual dimension. Now, so Julia, our smaller questions to you today are, how well do you know ghosts? Now, do you feel qualified at all?
No. I mean, there's a line that comes to mind from a movie where it says, "I see dead people."
Okay.
Is that...
Just hold that thought. Okay. Question one. There's two questions, both multiple choice. Question one. The Harry Potter books and movies by J.K. Rowling are fantasy books which explore the world of magic, ghosts, and spirits. Which of the following is a quote from the Harry Potter series of movies? Was it A, "I ain't afraid of no ghost"? Was it B, "I see dead people"? Was it C, "There is no such thing as magic"? Or D, "When the music stops, you'll see him in the mirror standing behind you"? So which of these was a quote from the Harry Potter set of movies?
Can we put it to the audience? D.
You're going to go with D. Maybe you want to try one of the earlier ones, just so that you don't start off badly. Because the correct answer is actually C. It's a slightly tricky question because they're the words on the lips of Harry's skeptical uncle, Vernon, who says that there is no such thing as magic. Because A, "I ain't afraid of no ghost" is from Ghostbusters, that's right. B is "I see dead people" is from...
I don't even remember.
It's from The Sixth Sense.
Thank you.
And then the final one, D, "When the music stops, you'll see him in the mirror standing behind you," was from The Conjuring. Do you have a favourite film involving ghosts or the spiritual dimension?
There's a movie called Ghost. That was quite interesting and fun. Whoopi Goldberg's great.
Yes.
As being the medium.
Yes.
So she's a classic.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good one.
Okay. Well, question two, it's not actually about any movie, so we're not moving on. Question two, according to a sci-fi supernatural study conducted in 2014, what percentage of Australians claimed to believe in ghosts and spirits? Was it A, 5%? Most Australians are hardened skeptics and don't believe in a spiritual dimension. Is it B, 25%? C, 50%? Or D, 95%? Most Australians claim to believe in ghosts and spirits.
Maybe B?
Or maybe... try another one in the middle.
Really
try another one in the middle.
C?
C, yes, that's right. Yes, congratulations.
Really?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, C,
Wow.
50%. Yeah, so interestingly, the survey said that 50% of Australians believed in ghosts and spirits. The survey also suggested that 42% believed in UFOs and 36% believed in angels communicating with the dead. So perhaps our society is a little less sceptical than some would have us think. So Julia, in our smaller questions, because you nearly got one right, so please give Julia a big round of applause. Now, Julia, we're talking about whether there is a spiritual dimension, a plane of existence beyond the material world. Now, Julia, you grew up in a non-religious home like half of Australians who don't believe in a spiritual dimension at all. Can you tell us about your life growing up?
So I grew up in a family with an older brother and mum and dad, which in some ways is unusual these days. And I just grew up in a family where my parents were quite cultured and musicians and academics and loved learning and discovering all sorts of different cultures and understandings. But I guess in terms of any sort of belief system or, a sense of God or religion, there was absolutely nothing in there. They just believed that you live a good life, you contribute well to society. You get, when you die, you get buried in the ground, that's it.
So you never went to church or anything like that as a family?
No.
So they were kind of happily non-religious. Would that be a way of describing them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they weren't antagonistic towards anyone's. They certainly were very. But I guess it wasn't even a conversation. But I certainly didn't get any sense of them being negative towards religion or spirituality. It just wasn't for them.
Yeah, you never really thought or talked about spiritual things at all.
No.
Yeah, okay.
No.
But you did do some religious instruction at school.
I did.
Did that mean much to you?
No, the funny part that I remember about that was I had the ability to memorise, because I'd always remember songs and probably things that were completely useless in some ways with school, but I'd memorise them, and the person who was leading this religious instruction would say, if you can remember this scripture, I imagine they were scriptures, come back and recite them, you'll get a lolly and a sticker. And I was like, yes, lolly, sticker. So I'd memorise them and come back. But it didn't, again, it was just words on a piece of paper or, I could recite them, but I didn't know what they meant.
Right, yeah, but you got the lolly.
I did.
Yeah.
I did really well. I think I got lots of stickers too. Probably Jesus loves you or something, one of those kind of stickers, I reckon.
So what were you feeling then about spiritual things in your early teenage years?
I mean, it's interesting when you hit your teenage years, there's a whole lot of things that start happening. And one was for me that I guess I really felt like I was questioning or started to question the premise that everything that I could see, everything that, was rational and understood, that was it, that was life. And I mean, there's nothing wrong about saying, live a good life and, contribute well to community and society. But I guess I started asking other questions.
Bigger questions, perhaps.
Yeah, bigger questions in my teenage years, because I was, I think there was something in me that wasn't satisfied that the premise that my family of origin had given to me, which was, that there isn't anything else, it just felt a little lacking. I just felt like maybe there was something more.
So you became a bit curious, perhaps, into this spiritual, to other things. And then your friends started dabbling in the occult.
Yeah.
So what was your experience there? What happened in the initial times?
So, I mean, it's a funny story because, we're a bunch of 14-year-olds, so that gives you an idea of the kind of age and stage. And I think there's things like the occult or witchcrafts, or one particular night we all decide, I don't know who started it, but someone decided to get out a Scrabble board and make it into a Ouija board, and we'll contact the dead, and all these kind of really interesting words that you use. And
so you thought this was kind of a good idea?
Well, I think it's peer. It's like that sort of let's do that, and none of us were really that. I think that, there was certainly a whole lot of very light-hearted humour and stupidity about it, really. As 14-year-olds, you're like, oh, yeah, sure, okay, let's do this. And
so you didn't really think that you could see dead people?
No, or that it was actually going to work. It's like, yeah, sure, there's, yeah.
So what happened?
Basically, we were mucking around, and then I guess the only way of describing is that something did start happening, in that, even there's a sense that something in the whole environment started to change, and we were, went from being really silly, stupid, humorous laughter to, I guess, just feeling a little bit more like, oh, this is a bit weird. And then there was a sense that, the idea is you all stick your finger on the glass and it moves around, and lots of people would say, oh, well, someone's moving it. But there was a point, and again, this is up for discussion and debate. I can only tell you as it was, and I wasn't on drugs, and I wasn't, intoxicated on alcohol. But we took our finger off the board at one point because it was spelling out things, and someone was quite disturbed disturbed by that because they were names and things that this person somehow related to. And the glass kept moving,
By itself.
which is where you go, okay, well, unless someone's got an invisible string, pretty elaborate hoax if that's the case. And ended up smashing, the glass ended up smashing. And at that point, that was where we all fled. I just remember screaming, or a whole lot of people screaming, running outside, because somehow if you get out of the space, that I guess makes it okay, it'll all go away. And yeah, just like that adrenaline rush, and like anything that you've just completely throws you.
So you were doing this thing, just harmless fun initially, playing this glass started moving by itself and then smashes. How do you react to that?
Yeah, it certainly threw me, because I'm a person who asks lots of questions and is quite sceptical. I mean, I would have said in answer to that percentage of Australians that believe in supernatural or something, 5%.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, nah, surely. But curiosity, I'm a very curious person too, so I think it's a good thing, but it gets you in a lot of trouble. And I was curious. I think something had happened that was not, was very different to what I'd believed about life or the world. Now, again, you could explain it all away by various things, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I thought, maybe there is actually some other dimension, some other, possibility of life. And it fueled my fire for exploring more and wanting to.
We'll talk about your journey in a moment, but according to the Skeptic Dictionary, tests by psychologists have demonstrated that many phenomena attributed to spiritual or paranormal forces are actually due to ideomotor action, where honest, intelligent people can consciously engage in muscular activity that is consistent with their expectations. So when people play the Ouija board, they know in advance what it's supposed to do. So what happened something you were expecting?
No, not at all. I would have thought that it would just be, just silly, and someone's moving it and you spell out some word. And I mean, if you spell out Mary or John, people go, oh yeah, I know a Mary, I know a John. Yeah, so no, wasn't at all what I was expecting. And that's again what just completely threw me.
So again, Carrie Popper, in a TED talk entitled A Scientific Approach to the Paranormal, has done scores of investigations into the claims of the spiritual dimension. She says that the truth is 10 times out of 10, science wins, saves the day and explains it all. So could science explain your experience?
Well, if she had have been there on the night, I mean, that would be in some ways that would be great. But I guess the long and the short answer is no. Not necessarily, but it's. This
was an encounter with a sort of a spiritual dimension that just sort of shattered your worldview in many ways. Yeah. So it stimulated curiosity. So what happened after that?
It did. So I then thought, well, this is interesting. Maybe you can tap into this sense of another dimension in life. Maybe you can harness some of it. I mean, I think part of it was I was, like many teenagers, trying to find a sense of identity and something that would distinguish you, make you stand out from the rest. And you mentioned Harry Potter. The premise is that, this person thought that they were just nobody, and then they found out they're somebody. And I think that.
So you felt you needed to go to Hogwarts to study further.
If it had been available at the time, I would have happily signed up. And so just started really reading a lot. So I'm certainly someone who doesn't just go, let's just do this half-heartedly. I like to do things in a fairly sincere, wholehearted way. So I just started practicing witchcraft. Really was the main sort of area that I became really interested in, and just understanding is there a possibility of harnessing this sense of another realm, and drawing in things and helping shape some sorts of, can I take control of my life? Maybe control's not the right word, but can I willfully see things happen,
manipulate things
in my.
So how did you harness it? What did that look like? Try to develop this sort of witchcraft sort of.
So I didn't actually join a group, mainly because I was sort of 14 to 16. Lots of people around my age group were just, I would probably say were novices, were sort of just, it was just very, that I just sort of dabble in that. Whereas I was like a disciple, like a devoted person to the craft. And so there's lots of stuff you do. You can, you do rituals, you create an altar, you have a sense of, being able to place yourself in this, in this posture where you're calling upon what you would probably call in this spiritual realm, and inviting that or asking that to help you with life situations or whatever it might be. I mean, I'm sure that, I was a teenager, so lots of it was around boys or, as well. May not have been life changing. So
this process for you, was it a good force for you?
Look, initially, I would say certainly it helped me to, feel like I was someone who had ability, who had a sense of connection. I think it gave me a sense of connection with some sort of, okay, well, if this is what life's about and this is where, that you can connect with another kind of dimension, then, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I guess over time, because a lot of my questions and curiosities were over, I think equally, because you have a couple of things happening, and again, this is quite a long time ago, but I just remember feeling quite, I didn't feel that good about myself equally, so I was looking for something that would give me a sense of grounding and identity and worth, and I would use different wording. Obviously, when I was a 15-year-old, it would have been different to that. But I wrote a lot of poetry, and lots of it was around, feeling quite. I feel like maybe I'm destined for something, but I don't really know what that is, and I'm not sure who I am. And so in the end, the force, as much as it was great, and I was learning and growing and coming across some pretty amazing people. I think what I started noticing too was, I think there's a sense of control in it, and I felt like some of the things were out of control, and I was, it was bringing up for me some, I guess, more negative sort of personality things, feeling frustrated or angry or, it didn't seem to, it wasn't long lasting either. I think that was the other thing. You'd do it and then it was great, and then you'd be back.
Right, yeah. You got involved with the New Age and sort of personal development programs. Now, as part of this, you went on a retreat with a spiritual guide.
I did.
What did you find on that retreat?
So this retreat the question was, who are you? It was interesting looking back. And so the whole time that we're away, you would do group work, you would do, one-on-one work, you'd be sent away. And secondly, I had this. And it definitely wasn't an audible voice, but I had this sense of something speaking to me and saying that the answer to that question you're not going to find within yourself. And I think what you need to understand is that the whole premise of what I was exploring was that you have the answer within yourself, that you will find it, you will discover it if you kind of dig deep enough or really, I guess, help to unlock the answer to that. So that kind of scared me too, because I was like, well, how does that work? Like, if I'm not sure myself, I've been told that I can discover the answer for myself, within myself, and then this voice is saying you're not going to discover it that way. I was like,
you kind of
how's that going to work?
So about this time then, you had a friend at work who claimed to have a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, you were antagonistic to Christians in high school.
I was.
So what was different with this woman?
She just was a normal person. Sounds so weird, but I had built up, and unfortunately I'd got across a number of Christians or followers of Jesus who were just weird. No offense, but they were just crazy. Like they just, either that or they'd make me feel like I had a beautiful friend earlier on in high school who became a Christian but kind of joined in with a weird sort of cult, and he took it upon himself to kind of, I think it was a project, so that was quite annoying to me for starters. I don't like being a project to anyone or for anyone. But then one night he got kind of frustrated and said, if you walk out the door tonight and get hit by a bus, you're going to go to hell. And now this is the worst thing you can ever say to a disrespecting authority and rebellious spirit. I'm like, good, let's give it a go. Where's the bus? I'm going to find it, you know. Let's try this theory out.
Yeah, so it was counterproductive. But this woman that you met, though, was different.
She was, and I think it was because she, she genuinely just, I just felt like she was a friend to me. There wasn't an agenda. I wasn't a project. She would share really vulnerably and openly about, her life, but there was certainly something about her. I think what was quite fascinating to me was there was something that she had, and again, it's not necessarily, you can't tangibly say, oh, that's exactly what it is, because I didn't know what that was, but she just had some sense of foundation or peace or something that was guiding her life that I kept looking at and going, gee, I felt like I was tossed around by everything. I'd be up and then I'd be really down and then I'd be all over the place doing retreats, and that was great, and then that'd all kind of wear off and I'd come back to her and she's just kind of consistent. I was like, what is this?
And she invited you to her wedding?
She did.
And what happened there?
She did. So, I guess what I got challenged by one particular person was, they said to me one day, do you know anything about Jesus? And I said, yeah, I know stuff about Jesus, because Jesus is in many of the books, and the people that have been across in the course that I'd gone to, he's held in high regard as a great teacher, enlightened one, whatever. So this person said, well, maybe you need to actually read about him and see what this Jesus is like. And I think to my surprise, he was very different to what I'd, these kind of ways in which he'd been framed. The thing that I loved, I think initially, was he was such a radical. He was so rebellious. I was like, oh, this person's great. He's not towing the line. He doesn't sit in anyone's camp and go, no, this is good. This is nice and comfortable. He'd challenge, but he was incredibly compassionate and loving. And I think, again, they were kind of values I'd grown up with, even from a secular family, but also just, for me, ideals. It's like, we should be helping to make the world better. We should be being people who are not just thinking about ourselves, but thinking about how it's going for others and what we could do to help.
Well, and so then you decided to follow him yourself? I
did. I mean, it took a while. I was probably one of the most interesting people to have in your small group.
Today's big question is there a spiritual dimension? And one of the reasons people reject the Bible is because it contains supernatural elements. For example, the American Humanist website says, by claiming that supernatural beings intervene in the world, the Bible opposes the scientific principle of natural laws operating uniformly and unvaryingly. Indeed, the Gospel of Mark, one of the 4 biographies of Jesus' life that we have, tells a story of supernatural beings intervening in the world. Mark recounts a time when Jesus goes into the synagogue to teach, and then a man who is described as being possessed by an impure spirit cries out. Now, so Julia, the book of Mark speaks about a spiritual dimension, evils and the like. Is what Mark describes consistent with your experience of witchcraft and the occult?
Yes, and even in my experience of walking with Jesus, I've certainly, encountered or engaged with a sense of, I don't even know how to frame it, but a sort of collision course between something that is good and then something that is evil. There's certainly been that dimension.
So this spiritual dimension that the Bible describes was real as far as your experience was concerned?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Mark writes that the spirit people were all amazed when they heard Jesus engaging this spiritual dimension. They said, "What is this? A new teaching, and with authority. He even gives orders to impure spirits, and they obey him." So what strikes you as you read about Jesus encountering this spiritual dimension?
If the premise is that this is a God who wants the best and loves us and wants to free us and wants to heal us and liberate us, then there's a sense in that story that, you know, that person had something that wasn't a helpful entity for him to have living in his life. And so when this spirit in him encountered God, there's again a clash of, you know, well, are you coming to claim your authority and your position, and therefore the two of us can't exist in the same space.
So someone has to win.
Yeah, but win in a. I think again that's the thing that I would love to get across, is that this is out of love. This is that God wants the best for us. So it's not driving something out just to say, "Hey, I'm more powerful and I can do whatever I want." It's getting rid of something that's going to stop you from being all you were created to be.
But also, well, he does have power to drive out this thing. Well, Jesus does seem to be in charge of this spiritual dimension as well,
Yes.
doesn't it? It seems to be, this is one of the things that the scriptures seem to be saying here, particularly where the people recognise he even gives orders to the impure spirits and they obey him. So, I mean, how does that strike you when you read that, particularly with your experience in the occult and dealing with this spiritual dimension?
Yeah, well, they're not all on an equal playing field. So, you know, at the end of the day, God is either God and has a sense of authority and sovereignty, whatever words you want to use, and that's what those people were seeing. That, well, I mean, he goes on to say things about himself, but this is the person who stands in authority, and that spirit knew it. That's the interesting thing about what the spirit says too about Jesus.
Yes, that's right. So, Julia, is there a spiritual dimension?
Yes, I would say the long and the short is yes.
Let me leave you with the Bible's answer to the big question: is there a spiritual dimension? From Mark 1:27. The people were all so amazed that they asked each other, "What is this? A new teaching, and with authority. He even gives orders to the impure spirits, and they obey him." I look forward to you joining us next time for bigger questions. Please thank our guest today, Julia Pope.